Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about, what were we talking about? School factors. I knew it had to do with education. And we're going to kind of follow up on that. Some big city school systems, such as New York's, Philadelphia's, and Chicago's, are experimenting with small schools, either freestanding or within larger schools, small enough for students, teachers, and parents to form a learning community. And I think we've all heard about these, little schools within schools and, little programs within schools. And it's a good thing, because they realize there's a problem in the school system. And this is their way, to try and help it out. Excuse me. The curriculum may have a special focus, such as ethnic studies. And that's something that is important to people. Now, if our Republican leaders have their way, we're probably going to do away with ethnic studies. And that's a shame because diversity is a fact of life. We have a world, and there are people from different countries in the world. There's different races and religions in the world. And to try and get rid of that is nothing but racist. So, hello, we see you. Teaching is flexible, innovative, and personalized. So it's geared towards the kid. Like I said, in Montessori style, is the best way to go. Your kid learns more because they're more involved in their learning. Teachers work together closely and get to know students well. And that's important too. There are some teachers that they don't care. You're just another person in this period class. And then there are teachers who do care. I've had some good teachers over the years. And my kids had some good teachers who do care, and that is important because when a teacher takes an interest in the kid, then the kid's going to be more interested in school and what they're learning. In Central Park East, a complex of 4 small, ethnically diverse elementary and secondary schools in New York's East Harlem, 90% of the students finish high school, and 9 out of 10 of those go on to college, as compared with an average citywide graduation rate of 50%. So see, by gearing their education towards them, making it more interesting to them and inclusive for them, they're having a much higher graduation rate than overall in the state. So that tells you that it's working. Dropping out of high school. Historically in the United States, education has been the ticket to economic and social advancement, and that's historically. However, for some students, school does not serve this vital purpose, and that might be because of their abilities, their needs, of the family. Society suffers when young people do not finish school, because that creates a cycle of poverty that it's hard to get out of once that becomes your life. Dropouts are more likely to be unemployed or to have low incomes, tend to end up on welfare, and to become involved with drugs, crime, and delinquency. So there's no really good outcome for dropouts. It's the rare dropout who drops out, gets a good job, and continues to grow in that job and become a successful person. That is a very rare dropout situation. In addition, the loss of taxable income burdens the public treasury, because if you're on welfare, then you're getting, welfare benefits, and, we got to pay for that with our taxes. That's why I didn't feel bad when, I was getting food stamps and Medicaid, because I was working, so I was paying my taxes too, so I was paying for this, So, yeah, I didn't feel bad about it because I was a single mom for 8 years and I needed it, In 1999, 11% of 16 to 24-year-olds had dropped out of high school. So, not quite a fourth. of kids have dropped out of high school then. So that's still a pretty good little chunk, you know. Hispanic students are more likely to drop out than African Americans, who are more likely to drop out than non-Hispanic whites. So, that's just a statistic here. Don't shoot the messenger. Hispanic immigrants have the highest rates, but even Hispanics born in the United States have higher rates than the other two groups. Dropout and high school completion rates vary among states. In 1990 to 2000, among 33 states who reported sufficient data, so evidently not all of them did report sufficient data, completion rates range from 89.3% in Wisconsin to 62.6% in Louisiana. So there's like a 20 some odd point difference there between Wisconsin and Louisiana. Now, I'm not going to say people in the southern states don't value education as much, but, well, most states reported annual dropout rates ranging from 4 to 6%. So overall, that's not that bad of a rate in the whole country. But there are pockets of the country where, you have a much higher rate than in other places. Low-income students are much more likely to drop out than middle or high-income students. And of course, again, we talked about the outlook and socioeconomic status for kids and how poverty can just make them feel hopeless. They feel like, I'm not going to succeed, so, why should I bother? And for your future, that's why you should bother. And that's what the parents and the teachers should be telling them, that this is for you. This ain't for us. We want you, to succeed. This is for you. The higher dropout rates among minority groups living in poverty may stem in part from the poor quality of their schools as compared with those attended by more advantaged children. And let's face that, that's a fact. There are people who want to argue that. But, in the inner city, bad neighborhood schools, you're not getting the quality teachers that you're getting out in the affluent neighborhoods, with the preppy schools. It's just not happening. So, anyone who wants to argue that you get your education anywhere, okay, but if your school's like on lockdown all the time and it's like they're in a prison rather than a school, it's a little harder to learn and get a good education in that environment. Among other possible reasons for the high Latino dropout rates are language difficulties, because some of them don't speak English as their first language. So that makes it harder for them to succeed in, language arts and things. Financial pressures, because if the family's having financial pressures, they might feel like the kid needs to go to work to help out. And a culture that puts family first. Like I say, family goes first. If the family's having troubles, you might have to drop out to help out. Since these students often leave school to help support their families. So again, my opinion on that is it's really not fair of you to ask that of your children, but like I say, everybody's different, so that as that's part of the culture, that they expect that of you. Students in single parent and remarried households, even relatively affluent ones, are more likely to drop out than a student living with both parents. And again, that comes from the attitude thing, the attitude about school, the attitude about success in life. They're watching these parents struggle. They're watching, maybe it's a girl watching the mom and thinks, why bother? This is what's going to happen. So, I'm going to just quit now while I'm ahead, and you're never going to be ahead. Frequent moves may contribute to the effects of family instability, and changing schools may reduce a family's social capital. Because if you're moving a lot, you're really not knowing other kids and feeling, like you have friends, not getting to know teachers in the school and things like that. The parents kind of are losing track of what's going on with the kids, and they don't have social capital. So they're just kind of thrown into the middle of a situation. And I knew a few, what people call military brats that I went to school with off and on, that, that was their problem. They were the new kid. They come in, any time of the year. Then they might be there. We had one girl, she was there not even for the whole year. She came in late in the fall, and then after the holiday, she's gone again. So, families that move a lot generally have weaker social connections, of course. Know less about the children's school because, usually they don't have time, don't have time to make those connections. And are less able to make wise decisions about schooling because they're not going to be there. And so they don't really have the time to sit and, go through what school's good here, good. And their feeling is, basically it might be that they're going to move anyway, so why invest that time and effort in figuring that out, Preschool experience, or the lack of it, may set the stage for high school success or failure. Like I said, the sooner you can start that kid learning, the better off they're going to be. Like I said, you get the kid in the high chair, give them a piece of paper, draw some circles and lines, say, here, draw this. And even if they aren't quite there yet, they're still doing something. And this, shows them that they can create. They can create, and they can learn, and they can reproduce what they're seeing. And that's empowering. Give them a sense of empowerment. I can do this. In the Chicago longitudinal study mentioned earlier, young people who had been in a high-quality early childhood education program were less likely to be held back or to drop out of high school. And that's because they learned to like school. Now, not all kids are going to like school, even if you get them in there early and start doing stuff with them, because, they might have a mental disability that holds them back, and it's harder for them to succeed in school than it is for other kids. So, you have to judge your kid based on them. They're not all the same. You can't compare one to the other. That's like comparing apples and oranges. Encourage the kid, because this is going to be their life, and they have to be ready to live it when the time comes. Time use can be an index of risk for dropping out of school. So how they use their time. Are they organized? Do they use their time wisely? If not, that can be a foreteller of they're not going to do so well in a structured environment, and they need to learn some time management skills, and that's your job to step in and teach them that. My goodness. In the St. Paul Time Use study reported in a previous section, 65% of young people who dropped out of school before 11th grade had no extracurricular activities and spent little time on homework, even though they did not have outside jobs. So these kids were not doing anything. They were not doing their homework. They were just kind of being lumps in the couch or bed and just, not doing anything. And that can be, childhood depression. There is such a thing. And it could be just hopelessness. So, if you notice this thing going on, step in and say, hey, what's going on here? You're not into things, and, you don't seem like you're caring about anything. How you feeling? What's going on with you? Excuse me, because that's your job. On the other hand, full-time work, 25 to 40 hours a week, was a risk factor. And that's, of course, because that's going to interfere with homework and anything else they got going on. 1/3 of all 11th grade dropouts and half of all 12th grade dropouts had begun working full-time by 11th grade. So when they start working and they started getting a feel for that money, they're like, I'm already working, I've got a job, I'm making money. Why should I continue school? And they'll drop out. And for some kids, that might be okay, but not for every kid, especially if they're capable of more. Time use is one way of looking at the key factor of active engagement. And active engagement is involvement in their schooling or involvement in schooling. On the other hand, the most basic active engagement means coming to class on time, being prepared, listening and responding to the teacher, and obeying school rules. And most kids are like that. Most kids are well adjusted, and they're in school to be in school and learn what they need to learn. A second level of engagement consists of getting involved with the coursework, asking questions, taking the initiative to seek help when needed, or doing extra projects. And there were a few classes that I did that in. I'd like to do some extra credit and do little projects and things that I'd be interested in. And some classes not so much. Yeah, okay. Just get me through this class. And there are, and most of them I knew were girls who went above and beyond, and they were looked at funnily by some people, but it's like, hey, if that's what they want to do, let them get into it, whatever. But we all know, and we used to call them goody goodies, but there are kids who really enjoy school, and school is their world. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they have life balance in other things too. They shouldn't not be involved in any extracurricular activities. They should not be, having friends, and locking themselves in the room with their studies. It shouldn't be that far, then that shows that there's some avoidance going on there. And what are they avoiding? Both levels of active engagement tend to pay off in positive school performance by at-risk students. So if you can get the children more involved, it's less likely that they're going to drop out. And that's what these schools up in New York and Philadelphia, the inner city schools that were kind of geared towards ethnic groups and things of that nature. That's what they're addressing, and that's what they're getting across to these students, that just because you come from the poor side of town or wrong side of the tracks, however you want to put it, doesn't mean you can't be successful. And here we're going to teach you how you can be successful, and that is a good thing. Students who participate in extracurricular activities also are less likely to drop out because they're more interested in school. They're more interested in being on the team, or in the drama or choral program or music band, whatever. They're more interested in school because they're enjoying at least some of their school experience, and making friends, and so this makes them less likely to drop out. What factors promote active engagement? Family encouragement is undoubtedly one. And of course, like I said, if the family has a strong attitude about school is important, you need to be doing your best, because that's going to pay off for you later, then they're more likely to believe that and do what they need to do. Others may be small class size and a warm, supportive school environment. Now, I had a child that had problems with other kids in the class. There was too many kids. They were too loud. He has ADD, and it's just too much for him. So when he got into a different class, we got him out of one teacher's class because she was just being a not good person to him, and got him into another teacher. She was a great teacher. Her own children, had mental disabilities, and so she knew how to teach him, and he thrived in her class. And I wish he could have had her throughout his school career. I wish it would have been in one room schoolhouse and she taught him all the way to graduation, because some of us next teachers were not so good about that. But if they can engage the kid, they're going to be better. Since engaged or alienated behavior patterns tend to be set early in a child's school career, Dropout prevention should start early too. And like I said, a friendly, supportive school environment. There are too many. I told my children before they got into school, I said, you're going to run across some petty little tyrants trying to run their little corner of the world the way they want to with an iron fist. Because I've met teachers like that, counselors like that, principals like that. And unfortunately, they did come across some. But then those people had to come across Miss Coleman. Like I said, the schools knew Miss Coleman's name, and they knew, like I said, I took one of my son's high schools all the way to the feds, to the federal ECE people, because they were not acting right. They were not respecting his rights. They were trying to take things away from him they had no right to do, trying to force him into programs they had no right to do. And I was not having it. He was 17. He couldn't advocate for himself. He was a child, and they were just running roughshod over him. And I'm like, no. And they kept playing games. And I took it to our school board. And I got an apology from the head of the school board. He apologized that this was happening. But in response to that, when he contacted the school, the principal acted like a and I was like, clearly we have a difference of opinion on what should be happening here. I'm like, oh, okay. Because clearly he wasn't going to listen to the head of the school board, so I took it to the state. And then he got mad about that, shot me an angry little email, so then I took it to the feds. Then they did what I said, because, they're going to lose their funding if they're going to keep acting like this. Miss Coleman knows the rights, Miss Coleman knows the rules. And that's how all parents should be. Your child has a right to an education, as long as they're acting like a decent person. Now if they're causing trouble and acting up, you can't really go in there and say, well, you ain't doing my kid right if your kid's not doing right. And I know parents who are like that, and it's like, no, you're the pot calling the kettle black because your kid is doing all this bad stuff that he shouldn't be doing. But my kid was one of the sweetest little kids you could ever wish to meet, and he just had a learning disability. And they were not allowing him that. And it's like the kid can't help it. It's documented. I got all these, stacks of papers this high, from his other previous grades at school. You cannot treat him like this. He gets this consideration and this consideration. And you can't flunk him out of this because you didn't give him extra time. You didn't give him a scribe on something that was timed. You can't do this to him. So you got to advocate for your kids sometimes, because there are little petty tyrants in the world who run things their way, no, wiggle room. And these schools are not good schools. These schools are not supportive environments. Like I said, there was another school that was run like a prison. Had security guards at the door, and the kids were assumed to be bad unless they showed themselves to be otherwise, and that's exactly the wrong way to approach that. Educational and vocational preparation. How do young people develop career goals? How do they decide whether or not to go to college, and if not, how to enter the world of work? And everybody's thinking, how do they do that? Many factors enter in, including individual ability and personality, education, socioeconomic and ethnic background, the advice of school counselors, life experiences, and societal values. And now the way I did it, because I assumed I was going to college. Most of my friends were going to college. And then in 10th grade, I broached the subject and was told, oh no, we're not sending you to college. We don't have the money for that, And then I'm like, oh, because then everything I had planned was down the toilet. I didn't know anything about grants or, scholarships or anything like that. And we had a bad counselor until my senior year. And then in my senior year, 2 weeks before graduation, my counselor calls a meeting with me and tells me, oh, your grades were good enough. We could have got you a scholarship. We can't get you in the fall. We might be able to get you in the spring. Well, I already had my life planned and, everything. And so I didn't take that because, I wasn't sure I was going to have a good enough job to afford, school payments with, whatever was left after the scholarship or anything like that. So basically, I started out on not a good foot and never really recovered from that, honestly, because about the time I started making, enough money, I had worked really hard jobs, taking care of people's children, taking care of elders in a nursing home for a few years. I was physically shot. And so I could not go any further. I reached a point where I had to quit. I went to the height and then had to scale back on hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, to the point where, I'm at home trying to work an hour or two, and some days can't even get that in. So, start your kids out on the good foot. If you can help them in any way, help them in any way. If you cannot help them in any way, as soon as I was told FAFSAs were open, I was on this computer, over here with the kids, and we were filling out the FAFSA, and we got the money, we got the grants, we, did what needed to be due, so 2 of them could go to college. The third one was in the work ready program, and he was working before he was even out of high school. So, we got him in the school he wanted to be in, and we had to fill out paperwork, of course, and apply to the school and all that fun stuff. And that's what parents should be doing for your kids. Those are your kids. That's your job to make sure they get the best education, they get the best possible outcome for their life. That's your job. These people who kind of throw their kids out the door and say, "Go get yours, I got mine." Well, I remember my grandparents, the greatest generation, they bought their children cars, they sent their children to school. So maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't. Because maybe you had some help, from your parents, and it's, not fair to just, throw your child in the water and say swim or die, because a lot of people will not be able to swim. So, but one thing I did do is I looked over my school grades and decided what my best grades were in. And my best grades were in psychology, and then the follow-up grades were in the arts, theater arts, chorus. So I knew I wanted to do something with psychology. I ended up going back to school in my 30s because a relative gave me some money to do that. So I started late in life on that. I had kids, and there had to be some work-life balance there. I could not do as much. I could not afford local schools, and then I found out I couldn't get a license because in the state I live in, you have to go to a school in that state unless you come with a license from somewhere else. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to get a license because I couldn't afford the schools in my area. So I went ahead and got my education, but I can't get a license with it. I got my equivalencies, and I got the knowledge for my clients because that's what I wanted it for. And so, for 17 years I worked with clients, and, I did some good for some people, but, my life could have been better, that's all I'm gonna say. So I made sure my kids' were. Influences on students' aspirations. Students' self-efficacy beliefs, their confidence in their educational and vocational prospects, shape the occupational options they consider and the way they prepare for careers. Because if they think they can do it, then they're more hopeful. If they think, well, my dad just worked this crap job for all his life, and, I'm going to have to work a crap job for all my life, and then that's how they're going to think. These beliefs and aspirations are often influenced by parents' own self-efficacy beliefs and aspirations. Like I said, your attitude rubs off, parents. So if that's not the attitude you want to show your children and you want them to have later on, change your attitude. Parents' values regarding academic achievement influence adolescents' values and occupational goals. Because like I said, if they think they can, they're more likely to try. Whereas if they have a bad attitude about it because dad says school ain't important or whatever, they're more likely to say, I'll just get my 9 to 5 and that'll be good enough for me. Gender also may have an influence. A 1992 report by the American Association of University Women, Educational Foundation, claim that schools shortchange girls by steering them away from science and math and into gender-typed pursuits. So there's still a little sexism in the college system. 6 years later, a follow-up study reported that girls were taking more science and math than before and doing better in those subjects. And I think we probably remember the commercials that were going on at that time. It's like, girls can do math and science, you know. And of course we can, you know. According to the National Center for Educational Statistics, male and female high school seniors are now equally likely to plan careers in math or science, although boys are much more likely to expect to go into engineering. I've met 2 female engineers out of all of them that I've met. I probably only met like 7 engineers in my entire life, but 2 of them were female, so they're still male heavy, you know, on that scope. But we're getting there, you know, girls. You can do whatever you want. You know, if you want to study math, science, be a scientist, you know, whatever, do it. Be a rocket scientist, go for it. You know, you want to be an engineer, do it. Nothing's stopping you. Nothing's stopping you. Boys take fewer English classes and lag in communication skills. And boys say about how women talk so much. Well, maybe that's because we learn to. We're more verbal. And again, that goes back to the connections in the corpus callosum. We have 3 times the connections, and both sides of our brain talk to each other faster. We can deal with logic and emotion at the same time, whereas men are more modal. They have less connections, and they have to shift gears from logic to emotion, and it's harder for them. So we can verbalize a lot faster and easier than men can. Sorry, guys. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. Hopefully this helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.